Hi folks, I've got something cool and a bit different to show you today. These are the Wildguarder NB1 night vision binoculars, and we're going to check them out right now on Kitbashed Survival. Alright, so a few weeks ago the folks at Wildguarder contacted me and asked me if I'd be interested in checking out a set of their night vision binoculars. And I thought, well, that's kind of a piece of survival equipment. It's for hunting and other stuff like that. And not to mention, it's just really cool. So I said, yeah, go ahead and send me a pair and I'll check them out. So they sent me the NB1 night vision binoculars. Now, Wildguarder makes two different models of night vision binoculars, the NB1 and the Owler one. The NB1 is the cheaper of the two. It goes for right at $330. And the Owler one goes for just a little bit more at $350 because it has a couple extra bells and whistles on it. So before we get started, I want to make a couple points. First of all, I am in no way an expert on night vision equipment, not even close. So if you've come here looking for a super professional expert review of night vision equipment, you're in the wrong place. However, if you want to see a regular guy getting excited to check out a new piece of gear, you're in the right place. Stick around. Secondly, because the NB1 and the Owler one night vision binoculars both sell for under $400, I would consider these to be relatively entry-level products. And it's important to keep that in mind because if you're going to compare these to other products on the market, make sure you're doing a fair comparison. Make sure you're comparing these with other entry-level products that are in a similar price range. I mean, it'd be silly to compare these to some $4,000 pair of military-grade night vision goggles. That's just not going to be a fair fight. So just make sure you set your expectations appropriately. These are going to do the job they say they're going to do. They'll be fine for amateur and maybe even semi-professional use, but let's face it, you're not going to be flying into Afghanistan going to do search and destroy missions with one of these. That's just not going to happen. Anyway, let's go ahead and check this out. So the box is pretty nice. It's got a good weight to it. Seems like a good quality cardboard. So on this side, we've got the contents. So it's got one Wildguarder NB1 night vision binoculars, one protective case, one USB cable, one AV output cable, a cleaning cloth, a neck strap, and a user manual. And then on this side, we've got the technical specs. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I know what all these tech specs mean. I'm not a camera or AV expert by any means, but we've got 1920 by 1080 HD images and video, 5 watt 850 nanometer infrared LED illuminator, view much farther than 3 watts, well, I guess 5 is more than 3. 5 or 7 infrared levels adjustment with external power bank. I'll go over that later. 3.6 to 10.8x zoom magnification with 3x digital zoom for a wider view. It supports anywhere from an 8GB to 128GB SD card. And by the way, this came with a 64GB SD card included, which was nice. Clearer photo shooting and video recording playback. 1/4 CMOS versus image intensifier, tube objective aperture. I don't know what all that means, but I'm sure somebody will tell us in the comments. Timestamp, date and time can be stamped on images and videos. And then of course you've got multiple languages, but of course the only one I care about right now is English. And speaking of English, you may notice that some of the English on here is not exactly perfect. That's pretty typical for tech that comes out of China. And then right here we've got the possible uses. So we've got hunter's night vision, home security, farm safety, scientific observation of animals, volunteer search and rescue, outdoor birding and hiking. All right, and there's the case. Go ahead and get it out. All right, case seems pretty well made, pretty durable. It's got kind of a herringbone pattern on it. Got a couple of zippers. All right. So we've got some equipment over here and then the binoculars right here. Got a cloth. There's the USB to mini USB cable. The neck strap. AV cable. This is kind of cool. It's a little micro SD card reader, but it just looks kind of snazzy. Comes in this nice little case. And there it is. So not bad, and it's really nice that they include one with this set. They don't make you go out and buy one on your own. And then we've got this thing, and at first I wasn't sure what this was meant to be used for, but I watched some videos, and apparently this is meant to allow you to secure an external power bank to the bottom of the binoculars. So it's got a tripod screw right here, and that screws into the bottom of the binoculars. And then you strap your USB power bank right here, and that gives you some external power so it'll run longer. And that also affects the functionality. I mentioned earlier in the specs that it has either 5 or 7 brightness levels for the infrared light. Well, if you're running on external power, you get 7 brightness levels, whereas you only get 5 if you're running purely off the internal batteries. So it's kind of cool. And then lastly, we've got the instructions. And finally, we get to the main event, the Wildguarder NB1 night vision binoculars. And there they are. So the whole thing has this black rubberized coating on it, which I'm sure was done for aesthetic reasons to give it a nice quality look. And it does look very nice. Now, just to nitpick a bit, I'm not the biggest fan of these rubberized coatings because, number one, they attract fingerprints like crazy. And also, as I'm sure many people know, these rubberized coatings tend to break down over time. At least they used to. Now, that doesn't happen for quite a while, 15, 20 years. But it is something. It's not a deal breaker by any means. It's just something to note. Right in the middle, we've got the big power button. Then we've got mode, snap, zoom, and IR. We'll go over all these later. On the front, we've got a nice big viewport. I like that. And it's got a soft rubber diaphragm around it. And then on either side, we've got the brackets for the neck strap. On this side, we've got the media ports. So we've got AV out, micro SD, and like I said, there's a 64 gigabyte card in there. And then we've got USB that can go out to a computer or an external power supply. Around the corner, we've got the viewing lenses. This lens here is for viewing under regular lighting conditions, daylight, indoor light, i.e. non-night vision viewing. And then behind this lens cap is the infrared night vision lens. And they've got this lens cap on top so that it's not damaged by bright lights or anything like that. Now, when you want to go to night vision, what you'll do is activate infrared mode on the binoculars, which I'll show you how to do in a little bit. And then you uncover the infrared lens, stow it like that, and then you're good for night vision. And of course, when you're not using night vision, you want to keep it covered like that. On the bottom, right here, is the focus wheel. And then over here, this is pretty neat. This is an infrared spot feature. So when you're in night vision mode, if you want to focus all the infrared light onto one spot, this is how you do it. Pretty cool. We've got 4 rubber feet down here. There's the tripod mount. And then we've got 2 battery bays. This is powered by 8 AA batteries, which I've already loaded up. And just to annoy the battery snobs, I've mixed my brands of batteries. Oh boy. All right, so I've got the camera looking down into the viewport on the night vision binoculars. I'm going to turn it on, but it's going to look a little strange because the camera is basically looking into a tunnel to see the view screen. But let's go ahead and power it up. And there's the intro screen. And here's the main screen. Now what you're seeing is actually the daytime camera. It looks black because right now the camera is looking at my black tabletop. But if I wave something in front of it, you can see that the camera is on. Although it's very blurry because you're not going to be able to get it in focus at this distance. But you'll see it in focus in just a couple minutes. Now you'll notice the text and stuff is a little blurry, and that's because the LCD backlight is so bright that it makes it look blurry on the camera. It's not blurry in person. I did turn the brightness on the LCD backlight down all the way to make it look as good as possible, but it's not going to look perfect. Anyway, so we're in snapshot mode right now, as noted by the little camera icon at the top left. You can see there's a battery icon. At the bottom, I believe that's the white balance indicator or the brightness indicator. And then at the top, you can see we've got the SD card stats up there. So if I change modes using the mode button, you can see we go to video mode. And then we go to playback mode. And then we go to the settings mode. And so you can use the buttons on top to navigate the settings. Like that. And then pressing the mode button again puts us back into snapshot mode. So right now we're in daylight camera mode. If I press the IR button, we'll go into infrared mode. Now you're not going to see anything because the lens cap is on the infrared lens, and also there'd be nothing to see right now anyway since it's pointing at my table. This is infrared mode 1. This is brightness setting 1, and we can go through 5 different brightness settings. And you'll see these in action when we go outside in just a minute. But there they are. And then when you've cycled through that, it comes back to regular daylight camera. Now, like I said, from what I've been told, if you hook an external power pack up to this thing, you get an extra 2 brightness modes on the infrared camera. So rather than going 1 to 5, it goes 1 to 7. But in practice, I found that 1 through 5 is plenty. I didn't feel I was missing anything not having the 7 modes, but you could have them if you really wanted them. Now, there's also the zoom button, and when you press that, you can see down at the bottom right, it starts zooming in, and it'll go all the way to a 3x zoom, I believe. Yeah. And then when you press it again, it goes back to normal view. So you can't zoom out, you can only zoom in. And then when you get to the end, it resets back to normal view. So kind of a little drawback there that you can't zoom out and zoom in, but it's okay. Again, when I was using this out in the field, it worked just fine, and I really didn't feel I was missing anything, and it really wasn't that big of a drawback. You just have to press a few extra buttons. Anyway, that's the basics of how the screen works and how the camera works. Now we're going to take it and shoot some video and take some pictures, and we'll see how it does. Alright, so now we're going to take a look at some of the footage that I shot with the Wildguarder NB1 night vision binoculars. I shot the daytime footage when I was at Dragon Con in downtown Atlanta. I was staying at the Hilton, and I shot this from the window of my room on the 14th floor. So this is looking down at the street below. This is about 50 to 100 yards. There's no zoom on this at all. And as you can see, it looks pretty sharp, at least it does to me. You can see the people very clearly. You can see a lot of detail on the sidewalk and the street. You can even read those paint markings where they mark where pipes are under the street before they do construction. And the Hilton sign is pretty clearly visible as well. And again, keep in mind this is at about 50 to 100 yards from the 14th floor. Up next is an unzoomed view across the street, and this is about 100 to 200 yards. And once again, it's a very clear image. You can see a lot of detail on the street and the sidewalk. You can see the people very clearly. You can read both the street sign and the park here sign. So again, it looks pretty good. You know, I'm no expert, but to my eyes, this looks just fine. And up next, I've got some close-ups. This is a full zoom shot of that Hilton sign that you saw earlier. The image is a little bit grainy, but keep in mind that this is a full digital zoom from pretty far away, and we all know that digital zooms are never as good as optical zooms, but still, the sign is completely legible. I probably could have gotten a little bit better focus if I had tried harder with that focus wheel. I'll talk more about that later. Now, here's a full zoom of that view across the street. It's a little grainy and pixelated, but keep in mind, this is 1 to 200 yards at full digital zoom. And even at that, it still looks okay, and the signs are totally legible. So yeah, it's not perfect, but for its purpose, I think it's totally fine. And then lastly, I wanted to show you a few really long distance shots. So this parking deck is probably a good 500 or 600 yards away. This is an unzoomed image, and as you can see, it looks pretty good. You can totally read the parking sign and see the details on the building. And then a couple days later in the morning, with some nice morning light, I did this shot looking at the top of a skyscraper. This is unzoomed, and as you can see, it looks really good. And then when we zoom in, it still looks good, although of course it is a little bit grainy with that digital zoom, but still perfectly usable. And again, when you see this image, keep in mind, this is probably a good 600 or 700 yards away at this point. Up next, I've got some night footage that I filmed in my backyard. So first up, I've just got some trees and leaves, and this is at a distance of about 20 yards. And I think it looks great. You can see the trees and the leaves perfectly fine. Really nothing to complain about here. I'm sure some video file would be able to pick this apart, but to my eyes, you know, as an amateur, it looks just fine. Here, I'm going to pan around a little bit so you can see what it looks like if you're in motion. And again, it looks just fine. And then in a second, I'll zoom in on some leaves, full zoom. And you can see it's a little grainy and pixelated, but then again, it is a digital zoom. And it is pretty far away at this point. It's about 25, 30 yards. Up next is some footage of me sitting in the dark, and yes, it was very dark. You can see I just waved my hand in front of my face. I could not see my hand, but the camera could see me just fine, and again, it looks great. This is an infrared brightness of 1, and I thought it looked just fine. In a second, I'll switch to a clip where it was an infrared brightness of 5, but to my eyes, really, it doesn't seem that different. Maybe an expert would be able to tell a difference in the brightness levels, but I thought they all looked just fine. I did not test the 6th and 7th brightness levels that you get with an external power pack, but I assume they would look very similar to these clips, which is great. And then finally, here's a demonstration of that infrared spot feature where it focuses all the infrared light on one location. Now, at this point, I'm 20, 25 yards away, which is pretty close. And so you can see with all that infrared light focused on me, I'm a bit washed out. So I would imagine this effect would be more useful for something that was a little further away, maybe 100 yards away, but you get the point. Alright, so there you have it, the Wildguarder NB1 night vision binoculars. I like this thing. As I said, I'm sure some videophiles or camera snobs could criticize certain aspects of it, but to me, it's a good product, it does what it says, and it works just fine. And so I would have no problem whatsoever recommending this. Now, I have seen this design of night vision binoculars with several different brand names on it, which is not uncommon for things made in China. I don't know about those other brands, but as far as the Wildguarder version goes, it's a good product and I like it. Now, with all that said, I do have some constructive criticism on this thing. I would like to see some smartphone or network integration, because it'd be great if you could operate this thing remotely, and it'd be great if you could focus it remotely. To focus this thing, it works just like a regular pair of binoculars in that you have a manual focus wheel, which is fine, but the downside of that is that if your hands are shaking a little bit, it's more difficult to get a fine focus, whereas if you could focus it remotely with your smartphone, you could get a perfect focus. But I realize that adding smartphone and network connectivity would raise the price of the item, so it's not a deal breaker at all. I'm not worried about it, but it'd be cool if it was there. So again, for the money you're paying, you're getting a very good product, and I would totally recommend this. Now, if you want to buy one of these things for yourself, I'll put a link to the Wildguarder site in the description below. I don't get any money if you buy one of these things. They're not paying me in any way to review this, and I don't get any sort of rev share if you buy one. So whether you buy one or not, I really don't care. I'm just here to show you the product, and you can take it from there. But let me know what you think in the comments below. For now, that's it. I'm Eric Siegel. This is Kit Bashed Survival. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.